DevOps. Auf die Ohren und ins Hirn. Ein Podcast rund um DevOps.
Von Dirk Söllner, Falko Werner und Luca in Germany. Hello, dear listeners. Today we have a bit of a problem because we didn't expect for this interview to be so interesting and run for so long. And so consequently, we didn't do any planning for the eventuality that maybe the recording actually runs over and will be split into 2 episodes. However, the interview was so awesome that we felt compelled to continue, and so we've recorded almost 1.5 hours of materials. 1.25, I should say. And so we're going to split it up once more. So don't be startled when the conversation will end rather abruptly around 45 minutes into it, and you will get the rest of it 2 weeks later as a separate episode. So we've decided that we're not going to have you wait for another month to get the second half of the interview. We'll just stagger it by 2 weeks. But the cutover will be slightly jarring just because we didn't actually plan on this being a 2-part episode. I'm very sorry about that, but I hope that you will find the episode so awesome that you'll be all right with this rather surprising turn of events.
Welcome to a new episode of DevOps auf die Ohren und ins Hirn, or in English, DevOps from the ears straight to your brain. Usually, this is a German language podcast, but we sometimes make exceptions for international guests. Today is one such exception. My name is Falko Werner. I'm hosting this podcast together with my colleagues Dirk Söllner and Luca Injani. We're DevOps consultants, trainers, coaches, trying to get teams to work together better and create better products for them and their customers. Today we have the guest Bryan Finster. I think best thing is you introduce yourself.
My name's Bryan Finster. I'm a value stream architect for Defense Unicorns. We're a company, we're trying to solve some really hard platform engineering problems for air-gapped platform delivery. So it's think about submarines as a place where you need a platform to deliver software. And how you get all of the dependencies in there. I've been a software engineer for 27 years, doing enterprise development for almost all that time, except for most recently. I'm the founder of Walmart's DevOps Dojo, and where we were working on helping teams solve the problem of continuous delivery in their context. Not do it this way, but how do we do that with what your particular application is and your particular team structure, and learned quite a lot of things along the way. So that's me.
Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks.
Usually we start off our sessions with a question to our guest, thinking about DevOps. That's a term that all people use sometimes. My feeling is it's getting a little bit less than we had in the past. But what is your take on DevOps? Do you have a definition even?
Oh, absolutely. Back when we were trying to solve CD for the very first time, we had Donovan Brown from Microsoft come and visit us at Walmart, and he introduced me to his definition, which I latched onto because it encompassed what it should really be, because it can be really vague and it's massively overloaded. His definition was the union of people, process, and product to enable the continuous delivery of value to the end user. And if you think about that, it's everything in the organization that has to be improved to continuously deliver value to the end user. So not a team, it's not a job, it's just how we operate.
Working model type of thing, getting everything in place and combining it. I also like your title that you mentioned, value stream architect. How does it relate to DevOps?
Well, DevOps has always been about value stream improvement. It's about how do we get from idea to end user and get feedback as rapidly as possible? How do we look at the process engineering around that? How do we make it easier for developers to develop software? How do we make it safer for that to happen? How do we, have improved stability? How do we architect the organization to improve communication paths? Because really what we're talking about is the supply chain of information through the organization. And you can map that information flow through the organization and see where the problems are that prevent you from doing things like continuous delivery. It's not enough to just throw tools at teams and tell them to deliver faster. It just doesn't work that way.
All right. So thanks for your mapping those things together. Today's episode is going to be about a word that you mentioned in the middle of the sentence. It's called safe. Today we're discussing failing and succeeding, scaling DevOps with safe. For that thing, I don't know, maybe Luca, do you want to pitch in with something from your side, getting the listeners listen to your voice as well, not just the short hello that I allowed you to have so far?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to talk about is what is safe anyway, and then we can maybe delve into Bryan's experience with safe and his views on safe, maybe things that are better than safe, if there are such things. So what's safe? What's the scaled agile framework for enterprise? That sounds like a mouthful.
Well, that's what it is. It's a scaled agile framework for the enterprise. It's trying to layer, process on top of agile to coordinate efforts across teams on bigger deliveries. We'll just leave it for that for now. That's what it's attempting to do, is trying to coordinate things across teams on bigger efforts at the enterprise level.
Okay, and why is that necessary? Like, why do we even need to scale? What is scaling in the first place?
Well, I don't think, honestly, that we do need to scale. But scaling would be, we're all, instead of having a team trying to deliver something, you've got a much larger group trying to deliver things, and scaling the agile process up to a level above those teams. So you wind up with, instead of a team scrum, you have a scrum of scrums where you have, the teams have their stand-up, and then you have a stand-up of stand-ups, that sort of thing. You have things like, we're all going to have standardized story points so that the project manager knows how big a story point is from team to team to team. We're going to do these things at a scaled up level.
Okay. Which sounds like it's actually quite necessary. Like, I can't imagine delivering a product that's this, a car, let's say, something as complex and big as a car, without having to scale up and having to coordinate between potentially hundreds of thousands of engineers.
Yeah, but all those parts that were built for the car were all built independently on their own schedules and then assembled. The first, and let's just back up, the first experience I had with Safe is I was working on one of these giant things. We're talking about, a warehouse management system that's 25 million lines of code that's built by about 400 developers scattered across multiple teams. There was no boundaries between teams at the code level. We were basically feature factories. Here's a feature for this team, feature for this team. We're all touching all the same code. You've got branches that last for like a quarter. They get integrated once a quarter. And so what we need is Safe to coordinate all this effort. Strangely, no, that didn't help. But we did have more meetings and more roles for more middle management. So we acquired that. But there's deeper levels of problems there that you can't fix with process. You can't just scale agile and add this process on there and to overcome the fundamental problems of the architecture was terrible. The team structure was terrible. We didn't have the right organization to actually deliver in a truly agile manner. It was basically waterfall with agile bolted onto it.
Okay, so that was a fairly big word, truly agile. What is true agility?
True agility is the ability to continuously deliver value to your end user. I honestly don't think there's lots of people who claim they're agile, but my firm belief is if you can't deliver on demand today, which you made changes to today, then you're not agile. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the purpose of the whole agile thing isn't stand-ups. It isn't 2-week sprints. The purpose is to get feedback on what we're delivering to find out if it's the right thing to deliver. I try to pare things down to make them easy enough for even me to understand. And one of those is agile mindset. You hear about people talking about agile mindset all the time. And it's like this vague culturally thing, but it's not vague. Here's the agile mindset, really, to me, all right? The requirements are wrong. If they're not wrong, we're going to misunderstand them. And if we don't misunderstand them, they'll change before we can deliver them. And so we are trying to deliver things in such a way that we're minimally wrong. We have a value hypothesis that we're trying to implement. Okay, cool. We think if we deliver this, we're going to get this value. Now, what's the core of that? What can we deliver the smallest thing possible to invalidate that hypothesis? And let's not build the whole thing and cross our fingers. Let's build small pieces, ship them frequently, get feedback, and then adjust the implementation as we go. And if I'm doing quarterly PI planning for all of the things we're going to deliver, that means that I'm going to get indications of my value hypothesis at the end of the quarter, or even at the end of the sprint terrifies me. That's much too much change. I want to know tomorrow about what I built today.
What do you need to get this working if it's not a framework descriptive thing, bringing roles and processes and so on and prolonging the time for feedback in such a setup that you explained or described earlier? 400 or several hundred people working together on a big chunk of code.
So we went through the effort of saying, okay, we're not meeting our goals. We weren't meeting our goals before we tried SAFe, and we met them even worse when we implemented SAFe. And so we said, okay, what we need to do to meet our goals is we need to figure out how we can, instead of delivering every quarter with, giant war rooms at the end of every delivery because we're going to break things, we want to deliver every 2 weeks. That was the ask, was every 2 weeks. And so our SVP told us, the group of senior engineers in the area, how do we do this? And so instead of bringing in, an agile coach and saying what we need is better agile process, he just left it to the engineers. How do we get this done? And so we got copies of continuous delivery, poured through them. We had done some looking into domain-driven design, and we had these goals. The team, we need to be able to deliver continuously. Every team needs to be able to deliver independently of every other team in any sequence. Because at 3:00 in the morning, you can't couple two teams together. And let's say with SAFe, you have release trains to couple teams together to manage that all of those dependencies as one thing. Well, if they're one thing, they should be in one team. So what we do is we re-architect the applications so that they're not one team. So we started carving out business domains, assigning those business capabilities from the warehouse management system to teams, created real product teams who owned that particular capability, established contracts between them, had domain diagrams internal to the team and across all the teams, so we knew where all those interfaces were, so we could look and see what the architecture was going to be, make sure we didn't have any weird dependencies between those teams, and then started peeling things apart. And so those teams could deliver independently of each other, so we descaled. And the team that I was leading on that effort, that one development team, we were responsible for receiving. And at one point, we were delivering, 5 to 10 times a day. Didn't have to ask permission from any other team. Didn't have to go to a release train engineer. We built Jenkins pipelines that we had a very small platform team, about 4 people, that templated Jenkins pipelines to make it so we had repeatable things that made it hard to make mistakes. And then we just shipped. It was liberating.
All right. Is all of that what you did forbidden by SAFe?
Oh, no. You can do all of that with SAFe. It's just that you don't need SAFe to do that.
No,
but the problem that I see with SAFe is that it's such a heavy lift to train everybody on the framework. So what I hear all the time from SAFe people is that, well, the thing that, where you guys started, that's just That's shoe. That's, for shuhari, right? That's your apprentice level thing. I'm like, okay, but you're going to train, thousands of developers on your apprentice level thing. The cost of entry to training at that level means that nothing improves because it's codified in, and you've created jobs. You've created like a release train engineer, which shouldn't be a job. I have pipelines for that. But you've created a job for release train engineer, which means it's very hard to move away from that because you're taking someone's paycheck.
I see that, but I also see current transformation where I'm coaching from waterfall, whatever agile teams, lots of different starting points, and trying to get them to understand what other people are doing, organizing communication.
Yep.
And from that point of view, we're still trying to get agile mindset in place. We still really have to cut down roles to get to what SAFe prescribes. So we don't add new roles. We have to really think about not only cutting down roles, but also cutting down people in existing current waterfall line management and flow organization management to get to even what SAFe prescribes. Isn't that maybe a good thing to reduce lots of overhead to get to that level and maybe go a next step? What you might also say about SAFe as an intermediate thing?
But instead of telling people what the next step is, because that would be improvement. But instead of telling people what the next step is, why don't we just tell people what our goals are and then map the path to get there? I've frequently had this conversation with people. It's like, I don't know, we need to meet them where they are. Of course we need to meet them where they are. But meeting them where they are, the argument I get is from people is that we just need to tell them tell them what shoe is, tell them where the next step is. I'm like, no. What if we just told them I can deliver daily in any architecture on any platform if I have everything in place to get that done? And that includes the right tooling, the right processes, and the right people's mindsets and the right architecture of the organization, right? I can do that. This is where we are today. Now, what's our roadmap to get to that? Because, honestly, I've heard people tell me they don't need to deliver continuously because their customers don't want features that frequently. They definitely want fixes that frequently. If something's broken, they want it fixed now, not on your next monthly release.
Yeah, but they don't also care if that's tested, but and working the same process, the same pipeline as a release. They just want it fixed. So hot fixes with little to no testing would be sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a dumpster fire, the thing we want to do is throw a bottle onto it and hope it's not gasoline and hope it's water, right? And we're just praying, but that's just no. I mean, we want to be able to quickly fix vulnerabilities. We've discovered a vulnerability that's leaving us at high risk for a data breach. Do we want to hot fix that in there, or do we want to have a safe process that we understand works every single time to get that done? Now, going back to your question, though, does SAFe, the Scaled Agile framework, does it prevent these things? No. You know why it doesn't? Because they cargo culted all of the ideas from everybody. If you go and look at all of the information that's in there, that's good, all the good information, it's all from other sources on how to do these things.
Yeah, it's from DevOps, even team topology,
value stream architect, value stream management,
design thinking. That's what I usually call SAFe as a vacuum cleaner.
But the problem that I have with it is there's lots of really bad ideas, and if you don't have the experience to know how to tell the difference between the good ideas and the bad ideas in the framework, you'll just get hurt. It's like the analogy I gave one time was you have a recipe book, right? And some of the recipes include cyanide in them, but you don't know cyanide's bad. And you're just like picking recipes and then hoping you don't get one with cyanide in it. A feature teams is a really good example of a recipe with cyanide in it, right? It's just a team that runs around delivering features for other teams. That's not a good idea. It's terrible for the architecture. If you do know what the bad ideas are, you don't need the framework as a clearinghouse of, as a smorgasbord buffet of good ideas, because you already know what the good ideas are, right? I don't need certification in it. I just need to understand what the good ideas are.
All right. So what are the good ideas of SAFe?
So the good ideas in SAFe, right? Improving value streams. Value stream mapping is an important thing. You can read all about it in continuous delivery and a whole bunch of other previous literature. The ability to deliver, continuously. It's, SAFe has included that. Organizing teams, but although if you ask the authors of team topologies, they'll tell you that they have modified their ideas on team topologies to make it more in line with what SAFe wants to do instead of more in line with effective delivery, right? And so sometimes they'll just bring things in verbatim, and sometimes they'll twist them to make them more appealing to people that are in a waterfall mindset, which doesn't get us to the next step. It gets people to fake agile. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there are good ideas in there, and they I know where they took them from because I know where the original sources are.
Yeah, original sources is always a good thing to know them, to get in touch with them. We also had one of those authors in our podcast, didn't we?
Which one, Manuel or?
Huh? We tried to. In the end, somehow the communication fizzled out. I really need to reach out to him again. But yeah, I would love to talk to one or both of them.
Yeah, it was ironic. There was a Medium post that SAFe filed a DMCA takedown because they used and they gave credit. They had a picture of the diagram for SAFe, and it's just ironic that they filed a DMCA takedown on somebody referencing their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about the good stuff in SAFe, which, and I don't think they're hiding the fact that they are taking good ideas from elsewhere.
Sure. I mean, we all do.
Of course. It would be terrible if we didn't, right? But so what's the cyanide? You already told us you don't like feature teams, but like, what's the worst idea in SAFe that you've? Spotted?
Well, I think worst ideas is difficult. I think it depends on what you're trying to do right that moment that's impeding me from delivering value. But I think feature teams is a big one. Having somebody responsible for release instead of having pipelines for release is a bad idea. Release trains is a bad idea. We should architect and re-engineer to not couple teams, right? And we should go down that journey and get it done instead of codifying a release train engineer to manage release trains. That's just, you don't want to get locked into that. It ties you to the slowest process and makes delivery incredibly expensive and risky at the same time. Those are bad ideas for sure. I didn't prep with a list of other bad ideas off the top of my head. I have a list somewhere of things I really, really hate.
Well, if you find that list, like if it's in an article or something, we can link in the show notes.
Yeah, and I do have a blog post called SAFe Isn't, and I'll send that to you.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds great. So, but yeah, so it's interesting. Maybe instead of being very general about it, maybe you can tell us the story of what happened at Walmart, where you introduced SAFe and then moved away from SAFe again. Well, you did it a couple of times, but maybe give us the entire trajectory.
Yeah, and you have to understand when you're talking about an organization like Walmart, there's not a monolithic. This is what happened because when you have like 18,000 plus developers scattered across multiple VP areas, and you're in an organization with a culture of a lot of autonomy at the director level, not even at the VP level. Directors have a lot of power to decide what happens in their areas. And so there was, people will say, well, you just had a bad implementation of SAFe. Well, there wasn't a implementation of SAFe. There was multiple areas with different implementations of SAFe that I could go and witness. So the thing that I was under personally was they brought this in and they sent us all through training to learn how to do, all the things, all the ceremonies for SAFe. And we had a lot of ceremonies and we had a lot of not breaking things down small and delivering things fast. It was just, okay, we're going to make things bigger so we can and have a bunch of meetings to make sure we have all of the dependencies mapped together. And we know that everything's, this feature has to release with this feature and coordinate all of that and just do massive coordination. You had, retrospectives at the organization level once a quarter, which didn't make anything better. You had a lot of very confused and demotivated engineers, software engineers trying to do work, but we're focusing on all these meetings on how to do SAFe correctly and trying to get better at that because we're told if we get better at SAFe, we're just going to deliver better. And, we didn't know any better because we had just come from a process where they sent us all through PMI training to become project managers. All the senior engineers, they gave us project management training so we could manage projects better. And then they gave us SAFe, right? And it's still just pain. And it wasn't until we actually started focusing on the CD that you could actually see, oh my God, there's like a totally better, different way to get this done. We didn't expect that it was going to be that much better. We just thought it was going to be, we were able to deliver more quickly. We were just trying to meet a business need. But the fact that we were able to not only meet the business need, but do it with higher quality, with better team morale and get faster feedback on things and make it less expensive to try new ideas. I mean, when I can get a Slack message from a distribution center to try something and then spin around in a couple of days from their idea and to deliver back a result and say, hey, what about this? Do you like this? Not even bug defects, bug fixes, but it's actually just ideas, right? When you see that dramatic change from focusing on the engineering and focusing on the outcomes instead of focusing on the process, and you've been living under that process for so long, you kind of developed hate. I don't think hate is too strong a word. Later on, when we started up the dojo and we were starting to work with their teams that helped them with continuous delivery, and we'd walk into some areas weren't using SAFe, they weren't using anything. They had teams just doing Scrum, and we'd help fix that, and so that they could actually deliver. But then there's some areas that are using different implementations of SAFe still at the time, and you'd see things like quarterly planning where people were listing out all of the stories that were to be delivered in which month of that quarter. Which week of which month of that quarter. And it was straight up waterfall without the discipline of a Gantt chart. It was just bad waterfall. He had release train engineers who were blocking things because, you're stepping on my toes. Well, you shouldn't have toes to step on because we don't need release train engineers. We need pipelines. We need teams who understand how to deliver quality. But I'm still told that those were all just bad implementations of SAFe. And I'm like, well, it's incredibly easy to make a bad implementation of SAFe based off of anecdotal evidence that I hear about and also direct evidence that I have. I've never seen a good one. And every time someone's claimed to see a good one or implemented a good one, it's like, well, we just used the stuff that worked. Like, cool. I do that too, but we don't call it SAFe and we don't have PI planning.
Is there another thing that you would suggest to look at if it's not SAFe?
It's hard.
And pick out the good things out of SAFe, or reading. You mentioned continuous delivery from Dave Farley, or other sources that you would prefer to start off with.
You start off with the problem. Yeah. SAFe is the solution to something. Okay. But what's the problem we're trying to solve? And let's go back to the definition of DevOps, the union of people, process, and product to enable the continuous delivery of value to the end user. All right, well, number one, we need to focus on why can't we continuously deliver value? Mm-hmm. Okay. We also need to focus on the people, right? How do we make it better for the people? What in the system is hurting the people? so that they can have better lives and focus on continuously delivering value to the end user? Do we have the right products? Do the people have the tools they need?
Tool set, yeah.
And how do we lean out the process? How do we look at every single process that we're doing and say, is this process actually adding value to the end user? And can we deliver sustainably? The thing that I found most effective is just, why can't we deliver continuously? Why can't I deliver today? And starting with, why can I integrate working code to the trunk today? When you start peeling apart those problems and trying to solve those problems, then you find the tooling and process solutions that you need to solve those problems. You start looking at your team structure and how the people are organized and say, okay, well, this structure is poor for what we're trying to do. We have too much coupling here or too many handoffs. We've got a testing team. Well, that doesn't work at 3:00 in the morning. So we don't want a testing team. We want the tests to be happening concurrent with the code to make it pipelines effective at preventing bad things from happening. We need to get better at doing that. And you start finding these problems. Well, why can't we do these things? As you focus always on the outcome you want, not focus on, hey, we need this heavy process and we might get this outcome. No, why can't we get the outcome? Fix those. It's just like any other engineering problem. And so when you do that and you start peeling these things apart, you find the problems in your context that you need to fix. We actually, last year, DevOps Enterprise Summit created minimumcd.org. Several of us were talking about people doing CD in ways that were causing them pain. It was dangerous. CD was getting banned places because they just said, hey, we've got a Jenkins pipeline. We're doing CD now. And so we put together this list of problems to solve that either we can do this or we can't do this. It's not subjective at all. That's your minimum to safely do continuous delivery. But the point isn't CD. The point is using CD to improve your organization.
And there you see architecture. There you see then things that come out the other end of Conway's Law and whatever.
Yeah,
and then you look into all the different ideas. You might get inspired by frameworks, but you don't say, for example, less is a better way to start, or EAD or whatever.
Yeah, I would just look at what problem do we need to solve, and then go and hunt down some solutions to that problem. When we started with why can't we integrate code at least daily? And the problem we had to solve is the requirements were unclear. And so because the requirements are unclear, the tests are difficult to come up with, which means we have to do a lot of exploratory coding to find out if it's the right thing and then do test after instead of test during or even test driven. And so we had to go find a solution to that. So we went, okay, what's the solution to that? And then we ran across behavior-driven development as a way to clarify things and make that a disciplined approach to getting testable acceptance criteria out of a story instead of just it should do some things and then go figure it out. You guys can figure it out during coding. I hated that. You ask a product owner, you'll figure it out during development. No, that's not the way quality happens. But things like that, it's like, okay, we have this problem. We need to come up with a solution for it. And the solution isn't more process. The solution is better engineering. Mm-hmm. But CD is an excellent way of shining a spotlight on what those problems are. You quickly uncover things like the team structure is wrong.
Let me ask you how that feels. Like if I'm trying to implement CD, how can I tell, how can I see that it's shining a light on my team structure as opposed to, I don't know, my code perhaps, or, my CD pipeline. Maybe my CD pipeline is just terrible. I don't know.
Well, your CD pipeline could be terrible.
That's a safe bet.
Hopefully you'll be in a better shape than we were when we started. We had to just go and read books and figure it out. And if you don't have anybody who has any experience that you can call on, which it gets easier now, but back then it wasn't. If you don't have that, you read books and figure it out. So if, you can tell your team structure is bad if you have things like Bob owns that service. And Bob's not here, so nobody can make changes to that service, right? Or, no, we can't actually deliver to production because it has to go to the testing team for them to validate it and then tell us whether or not it's good or not. So now you have an external handoff for delivery instead of having a deterministic pipeline. The pipeline's not deterministic. You have tests that are flaky and you don't trust your tests, but you ship anyway. Okay, well, that's terrifying. You have to fix that because that means you're going to be having to do a manual step. Any manual step in between commit and production is something to fix. That's a bad pipeline problem, right? I have to wait 2 days to get information from a product owner because the product owner is not part of the team. They're separate in the PMO. So we have a poor communication structure in the organization. I can't deliver that way. You just value stream map. I mean, that's the core tool right there is you map every single step from idea to delivery in that value stream. And I would start at the team level and work up. Other people prefer to go top down, but I found that if you start at the team level, then you start finding the impediments that a team has, and then you can start building and linking up to bigger value stream maps to find out, it's more of a graph really, to find out where those problems are. And then you can start looking at that and visualize, hey, this is a terrible structure. How do we improve this to flow things better?
But don't you have to do that with every team then? And doesn't it take too much time? And maybe do it repeatedly with every team in a similar way and learn the same things?
No, every team turns out to be pretty different in the experience. In the dojo, we would value stream map teams either as part of an engagement or just hey, would you like a value stream map done? Because it might help you. Every team learns something. There's some similarities. Everybody does, requirements, coding, building, delivery, but the details of that fluctuate wildly. I had several value stream maps that would show me exactly why it is that you don't want an external testing team. I actually have a blog post out there somewhere where I talk about the fact that, let's go back to agile mindset, the requirements are wrong or they're misunderstood. Okay, well, so if the requirements are wrong, then you have a testing team and a development team, each building their own code, because the testing team is either writing a manual script or testing automation. That's code either way, whether or not a human's running it or not. And the development team is coding, but they're both coding based off of poor requirements. So there's not a lot of value there. But worse is the requirements are fine, but each team misunderstood them differently. And what you see at the end is that the two come together, and then there's a triage process. I saw this repeatedly on multiple teams. There's a triage process. Is the test wrong or is the code wrong? Now, for some reason, people have this bias to thinking the testing team is correct. And then and in that case, the development team has to prove that they're not incorrect because the testing team are testers. So the test is correct, but the test is based off of the same poor misunderstanding as the development team, a different misunderstanding. And then you go through the triage process, you kind of get back to the product owner, you cycle back, you try to figure out which is right. Then you deliver it and find out that everything is wrong and the end user needed something else entirely. And people wonder why delivery is so painful and slow. It's like reporting. If you have 2 reports, one of them's wrong, always. So let's just bake it in so we have one report and get faster feedback on how wrong we are and fix it.
You've been mentioning this dojo. What is that dojo you were talking about?
Oh, yeah, thanks for asking. So the enterprise dojos are something that Target started up back in 2014, where what they would do is they would bring a team into the dojo and help the team learn how to improve how they deliver in the team's context with the team's work. So it wasn't like some contrived classroom thing. It's like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to bring you in, we're going to use immersive learning where we're going to use your work and we're going to, instead of having a 2-week sprint, you're going to have a 2.5-day sprint. We're going to deliver twice a week so that we can get rapid feedback over the next 6 weeks of what needs to be improved so that we can just keep snowballing that improvement. In the context of Walmart's dojo, we were focused on continuous delivery. That was an enterprise goal we had, to use CD to improve engineering excellence across the organization, improve delivery across the organization. And so we were focused on CD. So it was basically, why can't we CD? Let's value stream map you. And then let's work with you for the next 6 weeks with your code in your context, in your area. We like embed in that team for 6 weeks. It wasn't drive-by coaching. It's like, oh, your tests are terrible. Hey, let's get in with you and let's see how we can help improve those tests, teach you how to test better. You've got pipeline configuration issues here. Let's help with that. You use Git flow. That's terrible. Let's help you learn how to do trunk-based development, right? And hands-on. So it wasn't like the hand-wavy agile coachy thing that a lot of people suffer with.
There's something else that I'm really curious to hear about, and I wonder whether you were part of those conversations, which is how did that conversation actually go at the higher levels of management at Walmart? At first, introducing SAFe, but then later on saying, this was a terrible idea and we need to roll it all back.
So we were really fortunate in the logistics area because our SVP was a really forward-thinking guy. He had been a software engineer for a number of years, and I think leaving Walmart and coming back helped give him some perspective as well. He's the one that gave us that mission of how do we do this every 2 weeks, and he basically gave us a blank check to do what we needed to do. And so when we came to him with, okay, this is how we need to organize the teams, and here's the first teams that we should organize that way. We need to make sure that they're not going through a release train because the release train breaks the model we're after, where they can deploy independently of each other. And he was like, okay, let's do it because we're not meeting our business goals the way we were doing it before. So you don't just do it harder. You need to change something, right? And he supported us, and not only was it just like, yeah, you should go do that, but he'd have biweekly meetings talking about things that people were improving in the area. I don't know if you guys have seen the Smarter Everyday video with the reverse bicycle. He had one built. We had a reverse bicycle built to talk to people about mindset change, right?
Hang on, what's the reverse bicycle?
So on Smarter Every Day on YouTube, they have a thing where the guy built a bicycle where if you turn the handlebars left, it turns the wheel right. So you put a gear train on the handlebars, and then demonstrated that you could learn how to ride that. And in fact, it would adjust your brain so much after you got good at riding it that you'd have a hard time riding a normal bicycle again until you readjusted your brain again. It's similar to, I've seen experiments where people put prisms on glasses where you see upside down, and eventually your brain adjusts. And so he was using that to demonstrate, the level of mindset change required.
That's actually what you do. You see upside down and the brain adjusts so that it relates to everything is the other way around. So it's quite nice to see that the brain is that flexible. But it really takes a lot of time to unlearn if you already know how to ride a normal bicycle, to have this capability to ride the reverse bicycle. And that really took a lot of time. And the same thing was ways of working that you have in an organization, the culture, the structures. Those are the things, if you want to get improvements, then you have to do change, and you always have a lot of energy to put into to change something.
And the problem we have, though, and this coming back to SAFe, is hey, we're gonna use SAFe. Okay, why? What problem are we trying to solve? The issue is that you can't change. Culture is an outcome of change. It's not something you change. And you don't want to just change process, because how do you know you're doing the process better or worse? What we want to do is we want to focus on those outcomes. What is the outcome we want to achieve? Are we achieving it? Okay, now let's keep changing and improving things. And then the process we use is an outcome of us improving our outcomes. We don't just dictate process. We focus on outcome, and it evolves. On the first team I was on, I made a rule on the team. It's like, we have all this Scrum process we were supposed to do. I said, well, no, we don't have to do that anymore. What do you mean? No. We're focusing on continuous delivery. We've got this goal of delivering at least daily from this team. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at every process we do and make it prove that it needs to exist, or we don't do it. Stand-up's taking too much time. Well, we trim them down. Stand-up's not delivering value. Okay, we just won't do that. right? If we're sitting in the same area talking all the time, do we need to stand up? If we're visualizing, if we've got a Kanban board up in the area, do we need to stand up? If we're all focusing on that teamwork thing, then we're a team. What's supporting the stand up? We said we're going to have retrospectives. We're going to do them much more frequently, because why can't we, every single day is like, why can't we integrate code today? What's stopping us from doing continuous integration? And then what's stopping us from delivering every single day, multiple times a day? And just focus on that. Just make things better.
Hello, dear listeners. It's me again. So this is the end of the first part of our interview. And please look forward to the second half of it in roughly 2 weeks' time. See you then. Goodbye.